Good afternoon. My name is Richard Morris of ProFundCom, and welcome to the second in a series of webinars we're hosting for those in the financial services industry. Some of the clients have been asked questions relating to social media and email marketing, so today's webinar will hopefully answer some of those questions and perhaps pose others when we tackle the issues surrounding social media and compliance. For the next 25-30 minutes, we have the pleasure of two expert speakers within this field. Our first speaker is Paul Das of ProFundCom. Paul has been working with clients in financial services industry for over 10 years, helping them to address the issues of email deliverability, data management, and of course, compliance. Paul will cover things from the email marketing compliance position, and will cover off various aspects of the FSA's requirements surrounding that. Okay, I'll hand over to you now, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Richard. The first part of our webinar on social media compliance will look at the issues surrounding email compliance. And why that's relevant is most of social media is actually underpinned by email messaging. So when you get tweeted, when you get Facebook or LinkedIn, there's always some interaction around email. And also the fact that most people, no matter how advanced you think you are technologically, is some way communicating with their investor base, their prospect base, their client base using email. Before the webinar started, I know Richard and Lisa sent out a few emails ourselves asking any queries people had around email marketing per se in the finance sector. And what I was trying to do was actually, in this section, answer a few of those questions. The questions that kind of came back were really based around three specific themes, mainly around client prospect, email storage, and retention, where people who registered on the webinar were asking where should their data be held. They were asking how should it be held, and finally, why on earth should we be holding email data on our systems? Well, to answer it very simply, where your data should be held, they need to be securely held. And interestingly, a lot of people don't realize this, that the disk drives that the data is held on needs to be what's called write once only, where the data can only be written once to the disk drive and cannot be written over. That is actually a requirement that's a compliant requirement from the FSA as well as the SEC, so that people cannot go retrospectively changing emails that were sent to people and offers or that were made or not made. The second thing is around how emails should be held, and that is basically the data does need to be encrypted. It needs to be encrypted, so if it does fall into the wrong hands, it is not easy to see what was in the emails. And also the requirements is that 7 years worth of data of emails must be accessible immediately. So you cannot have none of this, I'm going to go and get a magnetic tape from somewhere, oh, I need to archive it, oh, I need to do something else. That data needs to be available immediately. And finally, why should it be held? Well, it's compliance and regulation. And as most of us know, after death and taxes, the other two certainties in life, we have compliance and regulation. So those are what people were asking. And what I realized is that nobody was asking questions around what the specific rules were. So just for your own delectation, here are the three main rules in the FSA, SEC, and ISO handbook that are worth having a look at or passing to your IT or compliance team to verify whether your platforms are compliant or not. This was one question that people weren't asking, as in, where do I find this information? But more worryingly, the questions that people were not asking were around data retention, archiving, identity management, the email hosting environment, the system securities, email encryption, and digital signatures for your emails. And while none of the people are asking these questions, it's also quite interesting that none of these issues are actually addressed by the main email platform vendors. And if you aren't asking these questions internally, the regulators will be asking you these questions. And if you haven't got the answers, it's even more worrying. What it all boils down to is that whatever email system you have internally, it boils down to are they showing any consideration for being compliant? And finally, the responsibility of compliance relies with yourself within sending emails out to prospects and investors. Just before I finish, I thought it would be churlish for me to say there is a product that does this, but there is, and that's ProFundCom. ProFundCom is basically an email marketing platform that is built with compliance as a cornerstone. If you want to find more information on it, there is a link to our website. And with that little section on what people have been asking us, I hope I've covered all the questions. What I will now do is I'll pass you back to Richard to introduce Lee.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. A lot of information in there, some of which you may have known, but quite enlightening for those who don't. Okay, our second speaker today is coming at the subject from the social media angle. Lee Worrell, MD of CEI Compliance, draws upon a wealth of experience from his 25 years working with major financial institutions. Some of these include Barclays Bank, AIG, Standard Bank, and the Zurich Banking Group. We first met Lee at an event a couple of months ago, and with a brief conversation with him, he sort of let me know about all the things that people don't necessarily know, so I thought he'd be a perfect fit for this webinar. So without further ado, let me hand over to Lee to take you through the social media aspects. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Paul, for that interesting insight. Compliance, as we all know, is a very dry subject, and more often than not in these webinars you will get the compliance guys bringing up various scare tactics or scaremongering. So I thought I'd start in the same vein and then we can get better from there. This is just a brief capture of fines that have happened in the last few years for individuals and companies. And as you can see, the amounts are many and varied. These involve financial promotions generally, or failings in financial promotions amongst other things. However, if they've been mentioned in the final notice, then they are obviously considered as important elements. The regulators consider social media as business as usual. They don't consider it to be anything special or anything unusual. They are effectively financial promotions of one sort or another. In fact, there is no absolute definition of social media that you can find in any of the handbooks. However, what is important to remember is that all these channels have a varied demographic audience, and particularly with the recent RDR focus, you do have to understand what your market is. And likewise with social media, you should identify your audience before you do any communications whatsoever. So, the rules of social media, they are fairly straightforward, and as far as the FSA is concerned, Facebook posts, blogs, Twitter, etc. Are not considered to be a real-time media. So therefore there's no exemptions from describing the risk or disclosing other key information if you are creating a financial promotion. Now, from a bank perspective, the drawbacks of social media are substantial and obviously stem from onerous regulations. And in the US, the SEC and FINRA have brought in new rules concerning these social media promotions, because they felt that their original financial promotions rules were actually inadequate. However, they're pretty much all in line with the FSA. So if you have blogs and articles on your website, there are questions around how often people should review these things, or any other messages or posts that they may have on social media. The problems arise where you have to look at the type of media you're using. If you advertise in a newspaper or trade publication, the advert has a short life and will probably be discarded after a fairly short space of time. Digital media is different. Digital media is stored indefinitely. So if you do have anything that is on the internet, on the web, you do need to make sure that it is reviewed and relevant. And if it needs to be updated, you update it on a regular basis. If it no longer applies to your audience and is irrelevant, take it down. One big question we often get asked, and we've helped a number of companies with their social media strategy, is, well, what platforms can I use? And the answer is any that you think are suitable. There's an innumerable number of platforms that can be used, and I'm not going to go into every single one of them, because the main ones obviously are Facebook, blogs, Twitter, certain other smaller ones or different disciplines such as Pinterest may also be used. But promoting a complex product on Twitter with 140 characters would obviously be extremely difficult, nigh on impossible, with all the risk warnings that you'd be required to use. So obviously that wouldn't be suitable. However, there are often other elements which you can use Twitter for, and it takes a little bit of planning but can be quite effective. The problem with the social media generally is that it has to be clear, fair and not misleading, of course, but it has to be standalone compliant, and that means effectively that in its own right it is a financial promotion if it meets all the financial promotion rules. So that's regardless of how or where it appears, which does actually create further problems, because several times we're asked the simple question is, well, if I can't get all the information on one blog, one post, one section, can I link two or more together and be parts 1 of 3, 2 of 3, etc.? And the simple answer is no. If you cannot articulate all that needs to be said in one posting, then the risk and disclosure rules apply, and you basically should not post that note. Whatever it is, if the whole financial promotion does not carry all the necessary risk warnings or disclosure, then don't do it. The FSA are very helpful when it comes to this type of promotion, because it is fairly new and they've taken the stance of the existing promotions rules being adequate. They have pushed out over time good practice notes, and obviously first of all it's got to be clear and balanced as well as accurate. The customer must be able to access the key information, and they must be able to see all the benefits and drawbacks of a product in close proximity to each other, one not in bold type and the other in normal type, etc. It has to be completely balanced and fair. and you have to place any risk information prominently on the first page of the website of the promotion. However, you can use various scripts which are available which will keep those warnings, disclosures actually current wherever the user scrolls up and down the screen. It will just be in a box that floats with it, which is very useful and can actually solve some of the problems. Sometimes we're asked various questions about sponsored links and advertising on the internet, and this is quite a common way of advertising. Sponsored links, AdWords for example, they can be used as financial promotions, and if they are to be used in that way, they should be, again, clear, fair and not misleading. There are various problems here that the sponsored links themselves are very limited. So you have to consider exactly how you're going to word it. For example, Google AdWords gives you 95 characters across a headline and 2 further lines of text. You obviously couldn't get anything very complex in there. But also the internet uses our very famous, and everybody uses them, banner adverts. And one big question is often asked about banners is, well, how can we use them? Can we use them? And the answer is yes, you can, providing that they are absolutely clear-cut. Everything is disclosed or presented in such a way as to satisfy the financial promotion rules. The content of the banner is obviously going to dictate as to whether the advert, you have to consider the right elements that are required according to the rules. Hyperlinks. This is another sometimes confusing part of internet advertising, where you get a particular word or a phrase which is hyperlinked to another area. If you click on it, you're taken to that area. This is effectively could be seen as a financial promotion, so it's effectively an issue, and it needs to have careful planning around it. If the link itself is considered to be an inducement or an invitation for somebody to invest, then that is a financial promotion, and you obviously can't get all the risk warnings in that hyperlink, so therefore it shouldn't be used. It's a little bit difficult when you look at all this. You think, all I'm being told is you can't do this, you can't do that. But to be honest, with a bit of creative and compliant oversight early on in the campaign, and I do encourage anybody to involve compliance right at the start of any marketing campaign, then you can actually sort this out very easily and plan accordingly. Many people shy away from it unnecessarily because it seems complex, but with a logical approach, and if you're using the right governance, the right storage and archiving, monitoring, review, you can actually identify a return on your investment, and it's obviously critical for management information. You need to know what kind of return you're going to get on your financial promotions to work out whether they're useful or not. Unfortunately, in the past, most financial promotions have been gauged on number of sales. This is fine, but with social media and email marketing, the analytics you can get are far more informative and can also mold and structure the way forward and how you're going to use financial promotions in the future. So with all these restrictions, how on earth can we use social media? Well, very simply, you can, but it does take a bit of planning. It's actually quite easy to set up a lot of these systems and be fully compliant in whatever regulatory space you occupy, whether you're on the retail distribution side or whether you're actually a global bank. These things are quite easily rectified with a bit of planning and the right advice. I think that's me just about done. I'll hand you back to Richard. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Again, a lot of things, a lot of information in those slides, and we will be making these slides available to view again as the whole presentation. But if you have any specific questions related to the elements that we've covered today, please drop us a line. You should still have the information on your screen. Now, we will be back in approximately a month's time with the next of our webinar series. The next one will be covering best practices to increase attendance to your own events. We'll send out the invites to this and hope to see you